interesting how God puts things together. Because what I want to preach on today is probably simple to the point of being insulting for some of you. But it's this. Hadn't thought about it. Our lives either make God glad or sad. And the way we live our lives either make each other glad or sad. And that's kind of big. About 3 weeks ago, after communion, a guy came up and said, "You really messed me up." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, what did I do this time?" He said, "Well, it really wasn't you, it was Jesus." I said, "Oh, Jesus messed you up, right?" He said, "Yeah, you said that thing about communion." I said, "What?" He said, "You said communion is taking Jesus inside you." And he said, "And so I did it. And all of a sudden I began to think some Jesus stuff and feel some Jesus stuff. And it dawned on me that I'm supposed to live some Jesus stuff." Now, there's a lot of Jesus talk, but there's not a whole lot of Jesus living. There's not a lot of Jesus practically understood because one has taken Christ in and become a Christian. And so you don't need to look at it all because we're going to do the scripture a little differently this morning, but you can if you want to. It's from Ephesians 4. It's on the back of the bulletin. We're part of the same body, it says. You realize that there was a time that we were not a people, and we are one now. You didn't come here, and you came here for whatever reason. Some people came here because they wanted to. Some people came here because some relative dragged them, or some friend invited them. And we're a unique people. We're some real well and some real sick folks. We're some people pretty well along the way, and we're some people that are just beginning. We're a church that actually has a conversation during worship, sometimes back and forth from chancel to pew, sometimes just with one another. Any number of illustrations, but there was a young lady in our church years ago with severe emotional difficulties. And we would pick her up in the middle of the night walking down Bailey Avenue in a slip. Any number of things. And one day when Tracy was very young, Anthony was just about 16 or 17, she was right up there in the balcony. And she was screaming and hollering and saying that she was going to jump. It was not during worship, but could have been. And so we came in there, and Tracy was in Anthony's arms, and she yelled, "I'm going to jump, and I'm going to finish it, and I'm going to finish it now." And so Anthony said, I won't quote it exactly, son. This is the Revised Standard Version. "Jump, darn you." We're sick and tired of your being sick, and we want you to be well. And I went up there in the balcony, and she was wearing a pair of blue jeans, took her by the arm, and she fell back on the floor. And I said to her, "Ann, it's time for you to be well now. Sick is done. In the name of God, I'm saying get well." Several weeks went by, and they were moving out of the area. And she got up and stood right here. Some of you were here. And she said, "I never had a family. I never had a people. I hear you all talk about that stuff. Until now." And she said, "I'll be moving the rest of my life." She travels as an accountant. And she said, "But my family residence is Wells. And my address is 2019 Bailey Avenue, Jackson, Mississippi." We still hear from her. And she's doing well. Once we wanted people. We had a guy who come running down the aisle saying to me he wanted some peanut butter. And I had to tell this story earlier. I'll tell it again. He insulted Miss Lou, who was our secretary at that time, Lou Ellamore. And he was really sick. Sometimes he thought he was Jesus. Sometimes he thought he was Muhammad. And sometimes he was all the ones at the same time. And so he came up and he scared the tar out of Luella, which was hard to do. This little lady didn't scare her easy. And so he came back, and boy, I lit into him. I said, "Ivy Lee, don't you ever," no, all that kind of, and I said, "And another thing too." He said, "Ooh, I've never seen you like this, preacher." And he said, "I'm going. I'm out of here." So he left. About 15, 20 minutes later, knock on the back door. There's Ivy Lee with a 6-pack of Bud for me. He said, man, you're mad. He said, I just wanted to help you get feeling better. And I said, I hate to tell you this, I believe, but I don't drink. And he said, what? You don't drink Bud? He said, everybody drinks Bud. I said, well, he said, I'll be back. And he came back later with a 6-pack of Pepsi, wasn't it, son? Yeah. Huh? No, Barks Root Beer. Yeah, Barks Root Beer. We kept that for years. Anyway, time passed. We didn't hear anything, and then we got a note. I'd gone off to preach, and I'd come back, and somebody said, I really died. Didn't have a funeral. They said, did one of those paupers burial things. And so I tried to contact the different funeral homes and finally got a hold of People's Funeral Home. They said, yeah, they stuck him somewhere out. Well, just a minute, we'll see. And I said, no, you don't need to. And I said to the church the next week, I said, hey, we're going to have funeral service for Ivy Lee. They knew him. And only about 8 came on a Saturday morning. Right out there where that building is, there was a scout hut, and he had helped build some little brick garden there. And so we had a little service there, and 8 Wells folks here, and here comes an old broken down Chevy. And stops, and a young man dressed up, I mean fine. He gets out, and he goes and opens the door, and this woman gets up, hat and all that kind of stuff. And out of the back comes a lovely, well-dressed young woman. And they walk over toward us, and the young man says, I'm Ivory's son, and this is Mom, and this is sister. And said, you know, he ain't never had a family until you all gave him peanut butter, until you loved him. Once we weren't a people, but by God and in the grace of Christ, we have received mercy and we have become a people. And when that happens, one of the first things we do is stop lying to one another. You see it right there? Stop lying and start telling the truth. One interesting thing about Mark Twain, he said, you know what's bad about lying? You've never experienced this, but I have. He said, you have to have such a good memory. You been there? Don't get so angry that you sin, and don't let the sun go down on your anger. I remember one night, I thought, my dear Pat was mistreating the kids. I can't even remember which one I thought she was mad at. And I said to her, I'd just show her. I went and I got in the bed, turned to my side, and said, good night. And that wasn't my usual way. And she didn't say anything. So in the morning when I got up, I said, why were you so mad with so-and-so? She said, what you talking about? And I just sort of told her what I thought. And she said, oh, honey, how can I tell you this? I said, just tell me. She said, well, it's my time of the month. I said, excuse me. You think the Bible's not practical? It says don't let the sun go down on your anger and don't go to bed angry. I'm telling you, listen, you hold on to anger and you suffer. You keep holding on to anger and you die. Yeah, okay. Don't give the devil a chance. I won't take long on that one, but I got to tell you. Yesterday we went to Wesley's wife's mama's funeral. Anthony, that's why we couldn't go with the team down to Baton Rouge to help. And I have a lovely little note here from them saying, thank you so much for your hospitality and love and for caring for us. And they had a whole bunch of preachers preach. It was quite a deal. And really a true celebration. But one of the little preachers got up and he said something I hadn't heard in a long time and one thing I never heard. And what he said was this. He said, you know, there is such a thing as heaven and there is such a thing as hell. You don't hear much about it. He said, but you're heading for one or the other one. And he said, you know what I always tell the devil? I'm sorry, we have a few young people here, but they can handle this. He said, what I tell the devil is to go to hell. I never heard that before. You? And I don't know what your theology is, but I can tell you this. There are times and places when you need to say, I don't know everything about evil, but I know it exists, and I wish that evil would just go to hell. It's time for violence to be down and kindness to be up. If you're a thief, quit stealing, be honest, and do hard work so you'll have something to give back. They stole our son-in-law's truck out of our driveway last week. We had it recovered. They haven't picked it up yet as far as we know, but it's recovered somewhere. You know the bad thing about that? The bad thing about that is there's no stability in a society if you don't know what belongs to who. And I've found a lot of people who are thieves get real upset if somebody steals from them. But they don't mind stealing from somebody else. And not only that, but there's a positive point to this whole thing. Get over the stealing stuff so you can give something to somebody. And we've seen it. We've seen people. You know, we blessed Keith Ferguson this morning and dear Glenda. And Kim Ingram, the guy that helped him get his life together and all that kind of stuff, had a reputation. And some of that reputation included some stealing stuff. But when Christ got into his life, that changed. He got over it. And instead of taking, he gave. And that's the way it is with everybody who finds this making God glad stuff really real. Listen to this. Stop all that silly talk. Say the right thing at the right time and help others by what you say. Now, I don't always do this, but Elaine, you're sitting right there and you got the bulletin. I want you to read that dark stuff. See the little dark block there? Read that out loud for us there. See the dark? Can you read it okay? Okay.
Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to needs that may benefit those who listen.
Yeah, beautiful, huh? One of the kids said the other day, I wrote about this, and one of the posts said, when did we start having so much dirty talk in movies? On the radio and all kind of stuff. When do we have so much dirty talk between ourselves? When did girls learn to cuss better than boys? Or just as well? And I'm not saying you go to heaven or you go to hell based on whether you cuss or not. I'm just saying that there is a certain kind of testimony we present in the language we use. Language is a powerful tool. And we need to be real careful about it. Because if you use the language of kindness and inclusiveness, of thoughtfulness and all, that's one thing. And if you use divisive, we've seen a lot of that in politics, huh? Mean-spirited, bad language, bad stuff. Then finally, don't make God's Spirit sad. The Spirit makes you sure that someday you're going to be free from your sins. So stop being bitter and angry and mad at others, and don't yell at one another or curse each other or ever be rude. Instead, be kind and merciful. I prefer the old translation there, tender-hearted. Be kind and tender-hearted. And forgive one another just as God forgave you. I sure wish I could get that into my own set of relationships all the time. Always kind, tender-hearted, and merciful. Always forgiving one another because I have been so beautifully and wonderfully forgiven. Dave Ramsey used to always say, I haven't heard his radio program in a long time, but he's one of these financial gurus, y'all know. When people say, how you doing? Better than I deserve. You know what? That's your story. That's my story. That's our story as men and women of faith. Every single one of us. Better than we believe. So, I'm done except for this. Did you really ever stop thinking about it? I'm serious. That our life either makes God glad or sad. And that the way we live either makes each other glad or sad. I'm for glad. And I'm for kind, tender-hearted, forgiving living. Let's be about the Father's business. And in the next few moments, we will take the Christ into us, who becomes the prompter of our being able to live that way. Amen.